Have you ever needed something so much it started chasing you? Silence is a word I've been very familiar with from a very young age. Cold, uncomfortable, awkward silence. In my household growing up, speaking up wasn't tolerated, permitted, or encouraged. It was considered a form of disrespect and often met with very harsh reprimanding. I had a very unstable childhood. I spent majority of it with my mom and my stepdad. To say anything against my mother's word led to extreme punishments. When it wasn't physical, it was often psychological. And her favorite technique was the silent treatment. And my stepdad often kept quiet to avoid confrontation. When I was about 5, I can recall a time. I remember catching my mom doing a thing with a guy who wasn't my stepdad. Ignorantly and innocently, I brought it up to my stepdad. And he must have brought it to her attention because when she came home that night, she stormed in and hit me so hard across my face, like we were the same age, but I was only 5. I asked her why, and she accused me of lying about something I was 100% sure that I saw. I cried a lot that night, but I knew that the pain wasn't emanating from the slap. This was my first memory of being silenced. Silenced to protect a lie, her lie, and silence for speaking my truth. Fast forward, I'm about 10 years old, and with little explanation and absolutely no say, I have to start spending every other weekend at my biological dad's house. One weekend, I'm staying there, and he begins to do a thing that I immediately knew wasn't okay. And I was afraid and ashamed and disgusted. But what hurt even more is that I knew when I went home that I didn't have anybody that I felt safe to tell it to. I didn't have the confidence to because my mom had stolen my voice and I hated her for that. When I was of age, I left to California for college. So finally, I was free from suffering and suffocation, or so I thought. This pattern of not speaking up followed me into my academic environments, to my friendships, my relationships. And thankfully, I had dance. Dance was my salvation, it was my form of communication. And I couldn't really express how I felt, but I could show you. I left to train in Canada, in Spain, and Paris. I thought that if I could change where I was, I could change who I was. But it turns out that I was just running. And then I ended up in a 5-year relationship that mirrored one similar to the one that I had with my mother. So, again, echoes of violence and chaos that ultimately just ended up leaving me feeling silenced. So, again, I left. And this time back to New York, where I began to practice and teach yoga. And then, very fortunately for me, I met the beautiful Rose Aaron. This ignited something in me. And I trained under her, And then this summer during the pandemic, she introduced me to a weird little studio called 3 Jewels. And then a few months later, I get an invitation from the beautiful goddess Miriam and the charming wizard Hector, asking me if I'd like to participate in a meditation teacher training. To be in more silence, I thought. But the loudest whisper told me to say yes. And that's pretty much how I ended up in a meditation teacher training. And though that has its validity, I think the more important question poses, why did I end up in a meditation teacher training? And I think it's to face that which I was running from for so long. Learning to get comfortable with it and learning to make peace with it. And I'm new at meditation, I'm new at yoga, but it's in that silence that I'm finally starting to hear my own voice, and in silence that I'm starting to believe my own truth. And it's through silence that the inner guide is at its highest and my anger is at its calmest. So, was silence trying to torture me, or was silence trying to teach me? According to this cute little concept called karma and emptiness, it turns out that I had the power to decide all along. So, what if the thing that's chasing you, or the thing that you're running from, is actually trying to free you from suffering? I'm so grateful for 3 Jewels, and I'm grateful for this meditation teacher training. It really helped shift the lens in which I view the world. And thank you. It's through yoga and through meditation that I'm starting to reawaken the power that I once thought that I lost. And by taking the time to heal others' minds, I'm planting the seeds to one day liberate mine. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you, 3 Jewels. Thank you, Hector and staff, TAs. Thank you, graduating class. Please stay.